And welcome back to the Army of Elephants. This is part 2, and just to recap, in part 1 we've seen how to take multiple images from a single rendering in Animator and save that and then load that into a dog waffle. And we may have loaded this one here, the color channel, into one plane, like the main channel, the main buffer. And then if you switch over to the swap buffer, right? If you swap the two buffers, lowercase j for jump, let's use the keyboard shortcut J for jump, you can put this one in, and that's the alpha mask. And you could invert it here if you want to make sure that the elephants are actually selected rather than transparent, because right now black indicates the opacity at 0 and white is full opacity, full visibility. So you could invert it right there, right? And then you are still working here on the swap buffer, so one thing you can do is jump back. We still have this color on the main buffer and the inverted channels on the swap buffer, and the swap buffer we can directly transfer over to the alpha. You see here on the image and alpha menu, you can say copy the swap buffer to the alpha. We don't have to do that through the menu. Again, we can do a Shift S, uppercase S, and now we have the selection mask. Again, always verify, by the way, that when you see those marching ants in the selection mask, that it's really selecting the inner side and not the outside. What's black here could be selected if you had used this original mask, because the white part indicates where the selection is, and the black part is the non-selected part, the fully transparent part. So if you go to the selection mask, one thing you could do to verify that is store alpha, and you can see indeed the elephants are selected in white. If that were not the case, if it looked like this inverted original shape, then what you would do is just click here and replace it, put it back in place as an inverted, and you now have the right way. You can also verify that with the overlay mode. It would show in pink if this was hidden, right? And if you enable selection overlay alpha, it's not turning to pink, so that means it's still fully selected. This part black is not going to turn to pink, because when you multiply black to another color like pink, it still remains black. So that's a little bit of a special case. But at least the part that is selected will not turn pink, and that's what we're really looking for. All right, so that's the second step, really. The first step before that would be actually, well, how do we get to this elephant in the first place? How do we make a 3D model of an elephant like that? So one thing we'll do in this tutorial is really discuss a little bit more on the animator side, how to create an elephant model. And I selected, there's a couple of shortcuts we'll start using a lot here. M for moving, A for selection if we had not selected it yet, and then R for rotation, and of course a number. That's when we are at the object level. And what we'll do is we'll start from scratch here. We'll start with a cube. So let me go and delete this, and let's go and create a cube. Now, when you're initially at this level here in the object mode, you can create a cube like so, put it right in there, and that will be a good starting point. Now, I can also use the Control-Shift-R. That's the shortcut for this tool up here, right? This one, to quickly rotate into a slightly different angle. And one thing we'll do is we'll work on the tail, we'll work on the head, we'll work on the ears sideways, and also at the bottom where the legs come out. Let's look at the legs first. If we had a way to extrude the legs from down here, it would be using that extrusion tool that we've used before, and that would be something like this here. But we need to first select the object. We need to make sure we're not in the rotation mode here, so Control-Shift-R out of that. And we need to go and select the object. And remember, we also need to turn this into a facet object. Right now it's a cube. If you double click it, you'll see it's a cube. The name reflects that. The default name given to it reflects that. One thing we can do, though, we can also subdivide this, and that's actually something that will be very useful, so let's go do that. Let's give it a subdivision of 3. And we could do 2 perhaps first, 2 and 2 and 2 on all of these facets, and you will see those subdivisions if you are in flat shaded mode. Make sure you are in wire or flat shaded. Wire, you'll also see through it, but if you're in smooth shaded, if you look at smooth shaded, you will not really notice the subdivision that you just did. So let's keep it in flat shaded. And let's look at it from slightly below. And then on top of that, okay, out of the rotate mode, Control Shift R. And now we want to start extruding those facets. So we need to convert that to a mesh representation or handle it as a subdivision surface. And I think I'll prefer this one in this case. So I'll go with the subdivision surface. And let's see what we can do from that. So we have the facet mode here that we can, the editing mode for vertices, edges, and facets. And if we go to the facet mode and go and select a facet, we can select this one. We can select with the right click this one. Right, this one was a left click, and this one is a right click, right click, right click. If we do the left click again, it drops the current selection and starts a new selection. So let's do a first one and another one, and we select all of these facets. We want those legs to be pulled out of that. So now we go and take the extrusion tool. Now we don't take this extrusion tool because that will keep it in a block. Right, that's not what we want. What you do want is this one where each of the facet is extruded individually. Right, and we get the beginning part of our legs. In fact, the elephant I had shown earlier, we didn't do a 2x2 subdivision, we did a 3x3. So let me undo that, Control Z until we have another look at that. Double click it, we need to be in the object selection mode, there you go. Double click it, and this time we'll do a subdivision of 3x3. I think that will be actually a little bit easier to work with, or better for the resulting look that I'm seeking. So now we have a 3x3. And again, we need to make sure we are now doing, convert this to a subdivided. And we can go now at that point to the facet editing, make sure we're on facet mode and select the facet. So we do this one, right click, right click, right click. So we now have the 4 parts that will become the legs as we pull them down. All right, so let's go again. Here in this case, we could actually use this extrusion mode because these are not connected parts. I don't know if it will show any or much of a difference, but I'm still going to use this one. All right. Now the next thing is we want the feet to kind of become little stumps that flatten out at the bottom a little bit. So let's go and use this one here. That's the facet scaling, and we can make them a little bit bigger like so. We can also actually introduce another section as we do that. So this tool here will do more of a bevel, like so. And then perhaps we can extrude it one more time, a little bit down, not too much, or even put it back in. I mean, there's really up. That's where you start showing your individuality and where you can add a little bit of something different to that model. All right. So Control Shift R to quickly go to rotation mode or viewing mode, and we got the 4 legs coming down here. And at any time, if you want one leg to look a little bit different from the others, you could go now and edit those facets, right? Those vertices. Those edges also, those are all pickable, and you can move them around. You just have to make sure that you're not staying in the facet mode. You go to the vertex mode or to the line mode, edge mode. For instance, if you grab vertex mode and select a vertex, you can go click this one. Oh, make sure you're not in the viewing, general viewing mode, Control Shift R. So there you can go and select this. You can right click to select this one also, or not. Let's go select just for this leg here. So right click and perhaps this one also. There you go. And you can now move those. So these tools here, rotation, move, you can move those. Oh, actually I did pick one from the neighboring legs here. But anyway, you get the idea. You can definitely totally work on those and make them each a little bit individual. Maybe one of the legs is inflected. What you can do now, next part is the tail. So let's have a look at the tail. Perhaps we want the back a little bit lower, right? This will be the back, and the tail will come out here on the left side. The front, the head will be on the right side. So here on the left side, maybe we want all of these edges selected. So we'll grab this vantage point from this side, and don't have to be too picky or too precise about it, just enough to be able to select kind of this entire range of lines here. So let's go to line selection mode, make sure we're still on that tool here, then line selection mode, and this time instead of the individual selection or picking, we'll do the marquee selection, and we'll just grab and make sure we're not in that rotation mode, Control Shift R to get out of the viewing, and select those. And so now you have a bunch of vertices selected. Control Shift R gives you a slightly better look, and this is where you might want to go to actually all views and perhaps see it from other vantage points as well. But for my taste, we can certainly, for my sake here, we can certainly use this. And so now let's move those over with the Move tool. Let's make sure we do Control Shift R to get out of viewing, and we can move those and perhaps flatten this a little bit. All right, and then we can do the same thing, go to the selection here, move that, actually move quite a bunch of these here. Let's do that like so, and again with the Move tool, move this a little bit. So you see how you can make this a slightly different, quite a drastically different shape now. All right, so it's time to handle the tail here. Let's go and Control Shift R and take a look. I'm going to grab this facet. That's one of the benefits of having done this initial tessellation by 3x3 or whatever you choose, 2x2, 4x4. You get this additional subdivision of facets that are individual new control facets, and you can go to facet mode, select the facet, and click on the one, Control Shift R to get out of that viewing. So now here you can select which one is going to spawn off the tail. I'm going to grab the one here at the top, just at the top of the rim on the back side, and I'm going to start extruding. So that will be this tool that we've done before, and here comes the start of the tail. Now at some point we'll want that tail to start moving down and then perhaps up. Right, do a little S shape or something like a little hook. So what you'll need is to rotate that. Let's go to the rotation tool for the facet, and that's this one here. And we can keep it in about this angle, Control Shift R to get out of that, and then start turning it, orienting it a little bit this way. Right, now it's time to do another extrusion step and go this way. It's also time to make it smaller, so let's go to the facet and make it a little bit smaller. Now it's time to start turning the other way with the hook, so we'll rotate it a little bit, or maybe we'll have this one more time, but the next one we do an extrusion, and then we'll do a slightly smaller once more, and we'll do a rotation going even towards you. You can even turn it sideways, but certainly start turning it up, and then do another extrusion going the wrong way. There you go. That was actually too much. Let's go and undo that and go about this way. There. And then rotate some more. Right, there you go. And then start extruding one more time. And rotate some more. And it's probably time to make it come really small now. So let's make it smaller. And one tiny little more of an extrusion, like so. Alright, so at this point we have a nice little tail, kind of a hook, and maybe it's too fat over here, too thick. You see how this is the right thickness, and maybe we need to bring this down. So again, Control Shift R to get out of the viewing, identify the vertices you'd like to bring closer together, and you can select them, go to vertex selection mode, make the marquee selection, perhaps we'll grab these here, and move those down, right? So here we go, move these down. Then go back to the marquee selection, and if you want to avoid the trip back and forth to that user tool, to that user interface, what I'd recommend is you look at the shortcuts. Again, there's a shortcut in the lower left. Keep your eye here on the lower left, and you'll see shortcuts appear. And between the different rotation and moving and selection tool, the lowercase a is usually the selection tool, so that's a quick one because it's on the left side on my keyboard. And then you got M for move. Right, and then this one here is lowercase r for rotate. So let's do A for selection, or actually this one here is the D for diagonal selection, I guess. So let's use shortcut D for diagonal selection. Let's go select this group of points, or right now I'm in vertex mode, so selection of vertices, and then M for move, and move that down. And then D for diagonal selection or drag selection. I don't know what exactly the D stands for. Let's go and select these here at the bottom of the tail, and move for move them up a little bit. There you go. So we have now a tail, Control Shift R to rotate this. Maybe it's too fat from the side, from the top here also, so we need to bring these a little bit closer. And actually that's something we could have addressed altogether simply by doing a scale. Let's show this D for selection, and we select this, and then we just use the scale tool. Of course, one of these is going to be scale. This one is N as in uniform scale, and then this one here is the S for scale. So let's use S for scale, and bring it down. Now that scale actually goes from the center of the object, so it's not going to scale just along this plane, and so the end perhaps might be a little bit more appropriate, and you can still control the depth but also the width here. So that makes the two scaling sort of independent. Control Shift R to go back, and we now have a much more perfect tail. Let's take a look at the front here. So now here we're going to need to take the neck coming out into the head, and then the spout, the nose. So for that one, let's do something like this here. Let's go and give it about this orientation, and Control Shift R. And this time I'm going to extrude multiple facets again. So I'm going to select facet mode. I'm going to select the individual selection tool. Pick one, right click, right click, right click, right click, right click. Do we want this down here too? We could, but well, let's try something different. Let's give it a smaller head this time. So let's go and extrude. Now this extrusion, I don't want to extrude individual facets because they'll come out like the legs side by side on their own. I want them to stay in a block, so I'm going to keep this one. I'm going to use this one, that's the uppercase Y as a shortcut, and it has the whole block coming out. So let's give it one a little bit, then another one, but then after that we'll make that actually bigger, so we'll have the head kind of bulge out a little bit. Let's scale it up, and there you go. And then we can give it some more extrusion. Oops, wrong one. Let's do this one. Right, let's stay on focus here. And then we probably need to do one more, but we'll rotate that. So let's rotate this one already. Maybe not quite like that. What we may need to do is actually Control Shift R to look at it from the side and see how that head starts to misform, and perhaps go to editing these vertices, doing some corrections on that. So let's go to Edge and Marquee Selection, select all this. Right, and then move this down a little bit. There you go. You can also rotate. There's a rotate tool. Again, you can rotate with the left button or with the right button. That will give you slightly different axis of rotation. You can also go to just vertex mode and select just these vertices and move them down. Right. So there you go. Now much better. Perhaps what I'll do now is look at it from the side again. There. I want to bring these a little bit closer, and then start the snout. And you could actually perhaps just try extruding the snout right there all together. So let's give that a try, and maybe that'll be messy, but we are starting to get a good sense of how to edit that and how to adjust that. Right? Maybe this is going to be an extraterrestrial elephant with two snouts. Let's go. Let's see what happens. We could do facet selection, right? And then see what we can. Oh, we're still in rotation mode. There you go. So if we right click, and so we have two extrusions here, we could do something like this, right? Two snouts, or the tusks, right? Let's do the tusks here. That's actually something I've never tried. Let's see that. Let's go like so. And very similar to the tail, by the way, right? In terms of we have a rotation, we have them come up a little bit, they get smaller, and then they come up even more. There you go. And then let's rotate them even more so, and rotate some, make them smaller one more, and then maybe even this one, really spiky ones. That will make very spiky tusks. Great, look at that. And so now we need Control Shift R to rotate it. We need one more. We need this facet here taken out for the spout, for the snort, for the nose. So let's go and do just that. What we'll do is facet selection, individual facet. See if we can pick it. No. Oh, we are still in rotation mode. That's right. There you go. I'm not sure if I got the right one here. I might have gotten the wrong one. Well, that will work just fine. It's coming down a little bit. So let's go and select that. Let's always keep in mind this is not too much of precise science or industrial design, right? What we're doing here is art, so it doesn't have to be all that precise. And it's okay to let it guide into a slightly different direction sometimes. So let's see if we can we can get the nose out here. Control Shift R to stop that rotation mode. And we have this guy. That's good. Let's rotate it. Oh, not this rotation, this here, facet rotation. Let's drag it down a little bit so that it's going definitely down. And then also make it a little bit smaller. There, now we start extruding it. and keep the size about the same, rotate it, and then extrude. So we do a lot of successive rotate, extrude, rotate, extrude. Do a couple of these where you rotate and you extrude, and you magically create that snout here. All right, so something like this. Oh, and there's one thing we forgot to do, by the way, although time here. You really need to get into the habit of saving. Save as, and then do a save often. Do an often repeat save, and give it an incremental number. Right. So this will be elephant, maybe elephant 3, because I've done 2 elephants already. And you'll do, and you'll save it incrementally with something a little bit bigger and bigger on the incrementing file name. So that's really important there too. All right, so now it's time to finish that little trumpet nose. So what we'll do is we'll give it a little bit bigger, and then we can go and perhaps bevel that and come back in. Actually, that was not a bevel. Undo, Control Z. Let's do this bevel here. It's not even that much better. Let's use. I like the other way better. Let's use this flat top, and then bring it back into the inside. Maybe a pointy way. Don't go too far though. All right. In fact, this is where it's really useful. Control Z to undo that. This is really useful to quickly switch to the wireframe mode. And you have, I think, a shortcut up here to do that. All right. This one here is wireframe. Control W, of course, uppercase. And then you can see through that node to see when you're going too far. All right. And then Control, probably F for flat. Let's see. Yep. Control Shift F to go flat shaded again. All right, Shift R, we have the start of our elephant almost done here. I think there is one more thing we need to do. Well, we can probably refine the shape of the skull there a little bit, but we also need the ears. And so for that, I'm going to start looking at doing, again, an extrusion of 2 facets. Let's say this one here. These 2 facets I'm going to extrude, or maybe back here, doesn't matter. You pick wherever they should be. Let's do these 2. Control Shift R out of viewing. Facet selection, where are they? Here, facet selection. Let's go select one, and then select the one below. So these 2 facets I'm going to extrude, and again, not like the legs, not like this, where they go individually, but instead I want to extrude them together, so they stay conjoined. And I could extrude just a little bit. Perhaps I want to make them scale a little bit, so go to scale and make them thinner, but still keep them up the size. So I think if you scale with the right button, it's going to be a little bit different. Doesn't matter so much. Again, it's art. And then you could use the edge editing to separate the edges up, down a little bit. In fact, let's have a look at that. Control Shift R. See if I can get it from the top. Yep, that's a good view, a good vantage point. So I can grab all these edges and just these edges. Let's go edge selection and get the marquee and do something like, oh, I'm still in viewing mode. Control Shift R, there you go. Let's select this. All right, and that may not be all exactly to select the edges I want. So maybe I want to deselect this one. Right click with the Alt key down. Alt right click will deselect it. All right, Control Shift R can give us a quick confirmation we have roughly the ones we need. There's one down here we didn't want. Control Shift R and Alt right click to deselect. And perhaps these here we don't want either. Right? So we just want the ones that are making this front part the most extruded part of the ear at this time. There's probably some other ones. This one here, there's a little one that's sticking out on the side here that we don't want either. So again, let's go right click with the Alt key. Alt and right click. There you go. So now we probably have just the edges we want. And Control R. And let's go and extrude that some more. So actually, we're not on facet extrusion, we're on edge selection here. So one thing we can do is we can move those. You can move those edges. Let's go Shift R out of viewing. There you go. So you can move those. You can also scale them. That's really what I wanted to do, is non-uniform scale. So you can scale, and we want to see it from this side here, right? So now that we have those edges selected, we can scale them up and thinner, closer together. So that's what the non-uniform scale will let you do. So you can go scale all sorts of different ways, and there's many different results, many different ways that this will result into the ears, the perfect ears you want. You can do a scale like so. You can now go back to facet mode, and once again select this and this facet with left and right click, and do even more extrusion. Let's see if we can get yet another, perhaps one last extrusion that becomes a little bit smaller. Control Shift R. Not this one, that's the wrong extrusion. That gives us 2 lobes. Although that might actually be sometimes kind of interesting too. Alright, and then so here we go, and then make the final scale down a little bit. There you go. So that's just one ear, and that might be all we need. Or we design the other ear at the same time. By the way, you could have done that extrusion all at the same time, right? Left and right side. Select the left side, add to it with the selection on the right side, and then start doing the extrusions, and they each go their own way in a perfectly symmetrical way. So that's certainly possible. And there's plenty of other little details we can work on. For instance, here on the snout, there's no doubt that that rhymes. On the snout, there's no doubt we can certainly go and do some more. Let's see. Whoa, that's not the right mode. Control Shift R. There you go. Select some of these and move them down. So that would be M for move, right? And move them down. And so you see, basically, it's really a nice environment to work around here. So A for selection, that's individual selection. That's not what I want. Let's do D for diagonal selection. I think the D stands for diagonal selection as a shortcut. And then M for move, obviously. And so there we go. I think that will give you some good ideas of how to start modeling your own elephants. We can go and take a last look here. There's probably eye sockets we should also work on. All sorts of different ways to extrude them. Instead of extruding them out like we did for the ears, we could take this facet here, for instance, right? Or have the socket here below the tusk. I don't know if that would make sense, but let's have this facet here and do an extrusion on that. So facet selection. Let's do that one. Would be okay. Let's try that actually. Let's select this facet and then the same facet on the other side. Right, Control Shift R to switch to viewing mode and look at it on the other side. We see the yellow facet here. As we look at it from the other side, it's blue, and we need the corresponding facet here. So let's go into out of viewing mode, and we're still on selection, but the left click would deselect this. So we really need right click. Oh, and that's the right click outside selection. No good. So let's do this. Select this. Control Shift R. Rotate to the other side. And then we have a vantage point we can pick on. Control Shift R out of viewing and right click. Now we have those 2 facets. This one here in yellow, this one's seen from the back side, it's in blue. And we can extrude those each individually to make a little socket bulge first, and then make them a little bit smaller, and then do an extrusion to the inside. Or again, if you want a hammerhead mix there, elephant with hammerhead, what's that? A hammerfont or an elehead? You can get these to go to the outside, but in fact, let's do that just for fun, right? Because I miss modeling my spaceship, and so I'm gonna go and add something else here. I'm gonna go and extrude a little bit, size it, extrude some more. And then I'm gonna go and make it smaller, and then the facet, the sockets are really gonna be in here. Let's see, maybe this. That's a good socket here. What's a good way to make a socket? Like so. Let's bring them in. There you go. So now we have eye sockets we can really be proud of. Control Shift R. Right. That's where you can put a sphere or an eye or something. But on top of that, you got plenty of room for satellite dishes and machine guns, and it's back to a spaceship, isn't it? One of those giant clones roaming on a snowy landscape. Don't want to name the movie, but we can we can extrude and shape this some more, and so that's basically done with that basic initial modeling. Don't forget to save your creation every once in a while. So I'm going to save as Elephant 3. It's a different version, so that'll be revision 001. different model. So it's model 3, but then revision 1. And that's where you need to keep adding, doing different saves. By the way, something that's really neat too, if you want to step back, if you say, oh, I wish I had access to that model without the, without the tusk, so without the snout, or, step back to just the earlier phase. Well, one thing you can do is Control Z to undo that. And all of your steps here, I don't know if all of them will be remembered, but a lot of them can be remembered. And you can see how it goes back. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Keep going. And all the way back down to that original cube. All the way back down to that original cube. Right there. And I can do Control Y to bring it back. And say redo, 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 redo. And so that's actually a nice little demonstration of all the steps we went through to go from one to the final model. And it's never final, of course. There's always something else we can think of and add to that. And that's the fun with this. You have so much creativity you can put into this. Of course, in the end, we'll want to render that. So let's say we do a rendering like so in this particular angle here. And we'll see in this way. Then perhaps we'll render it into a different, maybe a perspective view will be a little bit more appropriate. And you can rotate this. And you know what, that's really what we covered in the prior tutorial, where we give it different angles and rotate them, and actually also copy, paste it into different simultaneous visible presence. So we can show them both at the same time. So let's say we do a Control C, Control V to copy paste, and then we can move one of them in a different direction and perhaps farther away, and then Control C, Control V to get one more here. And we have a whole army of elephants marching down this way now. Control C, Control V. But that again is also something you could do simply at the level of your paint program, right? So if we take this next to Dog Waffle, we'll need just one elephant, and we can then plaster that elephant all over and paint it in the same orientation or even slightly different ones if we render multiple orientations with slight different angles. Right, so that will be something we'll do in the next tutorial. This one here was really meant to be focused mostly on just creating this model in the first place. There are many other ways to do that, by the way. You could model it in another 3D program and then take it into Animator in order to do some more tuning and adjusting. Maybe you create a low polygon model in some other program, and then you interpret that here, that low polygon model, you turn it into a subdivision surface from which you start extruding more and creating more fancy magic. So always good idea to learn more than one tool, because you'll find some things you can do in other tools that you couldn't do in your existing tools. And this is a great addition. Animator is, I think, a really, really great tool for beginning modeling and rendering as well, and to learn how to create some really fancy shapes and content that you can put into to work into your 2D art as well. So it all flows together. All right, I hope you liked this little tutorial addition, and we'll see you in the next one that will be more on compositing these elephants into a nice scene as they march down on the savannah or on some foreign planet. We'll try to put it all together in Dog Waffle in the next one. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.